So we don't press that for a bubble.
All right. Hello, everyone. I think the speaker is working well. So, as she mentioned, my name is Ellen Spooner, and I first want to say thank you so much to NCW Tech Alliance for inviting me. Thank you all for coming today. Time is the most precious thing that we have, so I don't know what happened. So I hope to, honestly, throughout this talk, my number one goal is to inspire you with optimism about the future of our planet, our people, through the use of AI and technology. And so what I want to talk to you about is the journey that I'm on to answer this question. Can we harness AI to benefit people and the planet? I have spent the last decade of my career working at organizations from the Smithsonian all the way to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is a federal agency that's responsible for taking care of our oceans, to now partnering with National Geographic, all to tell inspiring stories of sustainability and innovation. And so I'm going to answer my own question and give you the key takeaways right off the bat, because we all have super short attention spans, and if you walk away without knowing anything else, what I want you to know is that AI is a tool, it's not the driver. So can we use AI to create a better future for people and the planet? I believe that yes, we can, but it's determined by you. It's determined by us. It's determined by the people who decide to step in the arena and take action to guide the future of where AI can go. It's not predetermined. And I know it can be very scary, myself included, of where is this going, what are all of these technologies happening, like what is our future going to look like? But that is why, if nothing else, I encourage you to step into the arena, take your power, use your voice, because your voice matters and it can shape where we go. So if you walk away knowing nothing else, that's what I hope that you learn from my talk. So, that is exactly why I launched the Optimist Circuit podcast. I was curious to answer this question. As a scientist and a sustainability expert, when this whole AI revolution came about, my number one question was, okay, if it's as smart and as wonderful as everybody says it is, how can we use it to solve some of our greatest challenges in society? And I think for most people, when we became aware of or started interacting with AI, though it existed long before this, was in November of 2022 when OpenAI released ChatGPT. And that made a huge turning point with the accessibility of AI to basically anybody who has a computer and the internet. And for some, that sparked fear. For some, it sparked excitement, but for me, as a scientist, it sparked curiosity. And I also want to mention that I am an eternal optimist, and so, like I said with my key messages, my optimism comes from the fact that I believe that humans have the power to shape the future and where we go. And so that's why I started this Optimist Circuit podcast. And I want to give you guys some insight into the types of conversations that I've been having and the research that I've been doing through this work. So our goal with the podcast is to build the circuit connecting AI, tech, and nature and people. I think the nature and people are very key components of it because as the gentleman before me spoke, you can't just have the technology. You have to also consider how it interacts with the environment, the natural environment and the physical environment, and also the people who are behind building those tools. And through these conversations, I want to spark optimism and power solutions. And one of the very first conversations that I had was with the woman that you can see pictured here. Her name is Cheryl Goodman, and she was the former head of communications at Sony. and she led some really great innovations that they had, including like a super cool robot dog that you can learn more about if you listen to the podcast. But what I really liked and took away from my conversation with her was that if you have an interest or an expertise, there is a place for you with AI. You don't have to be an expert in AI. You can just use the tools to advance whatever your field or your interest is. And that was just one of the many conversations that I had. But I do want to also acknowledge the fear and real concerns with AI. Even just last night, as I was driving into my hotel room, I was talking with my driver and I was trying to get a sense of, what do you think of AI? Have you used it? And he gave me a really interesting answer, which I think is common for a lot of people, is, I've heard all of the opportunities and the excitement around it, and, that sounds cool, but I'm also a little bit worried. Like, I've heard that students are using it to write, and they're not learning how to write as well. And then also, as an environmentalist, I have become aware of the huge energy demands that data centers have and the water usage, and also like e-waste problems. So there are real concerns and real things to consider when looking at this AI. But again, I am an optimist, and I think everything is a tool that you can either use to build or to break, and the way that it's used shapes where it goes. So I like to turn some of these fears into opportunities. And again, through my research with this podcast and having conversations with leaders in the space at Microsoft, at robot companies in San Diego and many other places, I've learned about how a lot of these large tech companies have also made renewable energy commitments. And I believe that with the power and the innovation that they have, they can help accelerate the renewable energy infrastructure that we need to fight climate change at the pace that we need. Because for the first time, we have this huge energy demand and the people who have the will to do it. And so I like to look at it optimistically that that is an opportunity. And then the same thing, I was thinking a lot about what my driver mentioned to me of students writing with ChatGPT. And I would probably honestly do the same thing if I was in school, like you want to do the easiest thing to get through your classes and use ChatGPT to write. But what I do now is I think a way that you can turn it into an opportunity. So, for example, a lot of my work is needing to simplify complex science so that people who don't have a science background can understand that and then make decisions to better protect our environment. So one thing that I will do with AI, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Copilot, whichever tool you want to use, is I will put the sentences that I'm working on in there and say, how can I simplify this more? Tell me. And then that turns it into an opportunity to have a very highly personalized tutor or like a writing guide at your side. Because, like I said, I'm trained as a scientist, so I may think the word fish biomass is known by everybody. But not everybody may know that, and AI would be like, Ellen, just tell people there's a lot of fish. It's much simpler. And so there are a lot of challenges, and I do want to acknowledge them, but I also want to find the opportunities in those challenges. So here are some real-world examples from my work. I used to work at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. at the Natural History Museum. And while I was working there, I would work with scientists who were discovering new species. One of them is the jellyfish that you see pictured here, which was discovered way down at the bottom of the ocean in 2016. And how Smithsonian scientists used to discover new species is they would take a submarine down to the bottom of the ocean, scoop up the animal, bring it to the surface, which then would end up killing the animal, put it in a jar with formaldehyde, study its features, maybe even do some genetic testing, and that's how they would identify, is this a new species or not? Now, with AI, what they can do is just take photos and videos of these species, and then they can use AI to look at the patterns that they see and see if that's a new species or not. And so this is a great example of how AI is being used to up the discovery process of new species, save animals' lives, and expand our knowledge of marine life. Another really cool example from my research and my interviews in AI is from my work at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. As I mentioned earlier, they are the federal agency that is responsible for protecting endangered marine life. And oftentimes what happens, you may not think about it, but whales, which you can see pictured here, the back of a whale, will get hit by ships, like you can see in the background. And that happens because the captain of the ship, they're on a mission, they're going fast, it's really hard to see these whales, they can't see them, and they're going too fast for the whales to get out of the way. And it's actually a huge problem for a lot of endangered species, especially on the east coast of the United States. The North Atlantic right whale is a very endangered species that suffers a lot from this problem. But on the optimistic side, NOAA partnered with Microsoft and their AI for Good lab to use satellite data to track live location of where the whales are, and then transmit that data to the ship navigation systems to be able to tell the Navy, the shipping cargo, NOAA research vessels, all the different ships that are out there, where these whales are so that they can avoid their whale migration routes. And that has saved a lot of whale lives. There's still a lot of kinks to be worked out in that process, but overall, I think that's a really great example of how people are using AI for good. And a third example is also from Microsoft's AI for Good lab, where they are using AI to map nature-based tourism in island nations in the Caribbean. And that is the type of work that I do now. I work in Fiji, and Vanuatu, and Samoa, which are Pacific islands near Australia. And they rely very heavily on tourism. I'm sure a lot of you have seen advertisements or maybe have gone to Fiji yourself. And that's a huge part of their economy. And it's, of course, extremely focused on their coral reef ecosystems. So what Microsoft did is they used a bunch of publicly available data online and mapped where tourists are going and what are the coral reef hotspots, the beaches, all of the tourist destinations that are nature-based. And then they estimated how much money those coral reefs and those ecosystems are providing to that country. So now that country has an economic value, a reason to protect those areas. And that is part of the work that I do, is helping to establish the economic value and understanding of why and how countries can protect parts of their ocean. And not only did they identify where people are already going, but they also identified potential new areas where people could go to generate more revenue. Because a lot of these countries are developing countries and they need to provide livelihoods for their people. And so this is a way to balance the need of people and nature and AI in a sustainable way. So, back to my original question. Can we harness AI to benefit people and the planet? Again, I would say, yes, we can. It just depends on how you use those tools. As I've shown, we can use AI to build renewable energy infrastructure, identify new species in our ocean, protect whales from ship strikes, and help island nations map their oceans for sustainable growth. And so again, I just want to invite you to look at where are the problems in your work or in your school, or opportunities that you see where you can step into the conversation with your knowledge, your expertise, or even just your interests. Like the speaker before said, honestly, with AI now you can almost do anything. If you want to build an app, you don't need to know how to code anymore. You can figure it out. If you want to become a marine biologist, you can learn through ChatGPT what science is and do little experiments on your own. And so I just think it's like a huge opportunity for everybody to follow your dreams and do what you're passionate about and help shape where the future of AI and technology go. So with that, I want to say thank you so much again for your time.